So next session, or our last speaker, I would say, is Dr. Ronak Gandhi, who is the first endocrinologist in SN Medical College, Jodhpur, and he is tirelessly making efforts to develop this department of endocrinology in Jodhpur Medical College. His ESI trainee grant in 2019 after doing his DM endocrinology. Quiz winner of ESOCON 2019. He was runner-up in oral presentation in ESOCON 2019. He also got the IMECON Academic Excellence Gold Medal 2017 and also got the best paper presentation in Rajasthan RSSDI in 2016. Also runner-up in quiz at Raj Epicon 2016. He has got more than 20 scientific publications in various indexed national and international journals. So over to Dr. Ronak Gandhi.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you to Dr. Anand Meenawat, sir, for inviting me and deliberate a session on this kind of a different topic from the whole of the physician's approach. Whenever we are talking, we are usually talking about the diabetes, thyroid and everything, but it is a kind of different topic. At least we should have some insight, or at least we should have some sensitization of the general physicians who are dealing in and out. We are seeing so much ultrasonography, so much of CT scans for the period of time, and we incidentally sometimes have to look at a lesion or an adrenal mass that is there. So how to approach to an adrenal mass? What should we do? Should we refer it to the urologist, that it is the urologist's headache, that he will manage and handle the adrenal mass? We are not going to do anything about it. But the urologist is as much confused as you people are about this adrenal masses. So I am providing an approach that how can we just see to some extent that what adrenal masses are usually composed of, what as a physicians, as an endocrinologist we do for it, and how to overcome the enigma of the patient or the anxiousness of the patient, what we can offer to the patient for who are having such kind of adrenal lesions. So I'll be starting with the definition. So the adrenal incidentaloma, they are defined as the clinically, or when the patient has undergone a cross-sectional imaging for some other purpose, and he gets to find out that there is a mass in the adrenal and that is measuring more than equal to 1 centimeter in diameter. Then the person is said to be having an adrenal incidentaloma. It excludes that the patient is already having some kind of malignancy or hereditary cancer syndrome, and if we try to work up for that that part of the in that perspective, and if we happen to find out a lesion in the adrenal gland, then it is considered as the not considered as the adrenal incidentaloma. So it is a serendipitous finding that we were finding something else and we got to know that the patient is harboring an adrenal mass. So the prevalence of this adrenal incidentaloma, the adrenal incidentaloma are quite prevalent. Up to autopsy studies have suggested that up to 2% of the patients might be having adrenal incidentaloma, and as the age increases, the incidence goes on increasing. So the range of the percentages that has been provided can range up to 15 to 20% in the high age patients, and where the patients have been screened specifically to see for something for the abdominal problem. So 3% of adults more than 50 years of age, and up to 10% patients who are having more than 80 years of age can be having adrenal incidentaloma. So the increase has been seen from 1995 to 2017 because of the diagnostic modalities that are available. So as much more frequently we are advising for the cross-sectional imaging, be it ultrasound, be it CT or MR, when we advise these, they tend to pick up something, and as the technology is advancing, the initial CTs or initial imaging modalities, they were not able to screen the smaller nodules of 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters. Now they are the modalities of investigation, they have dwelled so much into it that they can even identify 1 millimeter masses, 2 millimeter masses, 3 millimeter masses. So this increases this is the problem of the more and more investigation, that we are finding much and more of the incidentalomas. And also there has been one of the papers and one of the guidelines that suggests that whenever a patient is subjected for chest CT, the patient should have a scan up to the adrenal gland so as to look at the adrenal glands along with the CT, along with the chest CT. So this has also led up in the proportion that the number of incidentalomas arising from the adrenal has gone up. In children, adrenal tumors are more common in a way that if adrenal mass is seen, then it is more likely to be a malignant mass rather than having a benign mass. And the adrenal tumors are kind of rare, and if they are found, they are mostly pathological entities as such. So what these adrenal incidentalomas can be, so we have that these generally incidentalomas, they are usually the adenomas which are non-functioning in nature, mostly 75 to 80%, they are non-functioning adenomas. They won't be producing any kind of hormone, they won't be producing any kind of mass effect, or they won't be disturbing the physiology of the patient at all. Otherwise, these incidentaloma can turn out to be autonomously cortisol secreting. The term will come up of minimal or mild autonomously secreting corticosteroid secretion, MAX. And the second thing that it can be, there will be pheochromocytoma, they can be adrenocortical carcinomas, and in the surgical series, when they have operated with such kind of incidentalomas, they have found that more of pheochromocytomas, even when we see at the percentages from the medical literature, that is 7% of pheochromocytomas have been diagnosed, while in surgical literature there are 10% of the pheochromocytomas has been diagnosed. So there is a proportion of the pheochromocytomas that are non-secretory. So they are not secreting the hormones, the catecholamines, and thus they can be missed on the hormonal assays as well as the imaging assays, and when they are operated, and the histopathology only confirms it to be pheochromocytoma. So there is a 15 to 30% of the pheochromocytomas are usually non-secretory and the patient may remain normotensive. Other benign lesions that need a mention is a myelolipoma, cyst can be there, ganglioneuroma, and metastasis can be there as the presenting manifestation in the adrenal incidentaloma. So we need to evaluate these adrenal incidentalomas. Why we need to evaluate? The important question is why we need to evaluate, because of the benign, most of the lesions are benign, but there is a possibility of adrenocortical carcinoma, there is a possibility of pheochromocytoma, there is a possibility of primary hyperaldosteronism. So these diagnoses must be ruled out before we subject the patient to kind of watchful waiting. If we are going on to advise patient to just keep on following up with us, we should be careful about these diagnoses, and we should rule out these diagnoses. So the first thing we should need to know is the patient, the tumor is hormonally active or not. If the tumor is producing some kind of hormone, as we already know that there are 3 zones in the adrenal cortex, the zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis, so they would be secreting corticosteroid, producing the Cushing syndrome, overt or minimal mild or adrenal corticosteroid secretion. Second thing, that would be reticularis, fasciculata, that would be secreting aldosterone, so aldosterone hypersecretion can be there, the problem of primary hyperaldo. Third, we can have sex steroid secretion because of the bilateral macronodular adrenal hyperplasia, or the medulla that might be secreting catecholamines and epinephrine, norepinephrine. So this becomes a task to rule out that the tumor is hormonally active or not. The second thing that we need to rule out is radiological characteristic of the tumor. This radiological characteristic are important to rule out. Majorly we tend to rule out the malignant lesion from the mass. The incidentaloma that we have seen, this should not be a malignant lesion. So to rule out malignant potential, we mostly focus on the imaging studies, and to rule out the functional status, we go for the hormonal workup. How do we work up? We work up in the parallel fashion, that when are we working for the imaging part, we also work up along for the hormonal workup. We should not be delayed. It should not be seen that first we will finish the imaging and then we will start on to the hormonal status. So the potential malignant, if we do the imaging status or imaging studies to find out that the tumor is malignant or not, is it a benign lesion or a malignant lesion. So the imaging modalities that we usually follow are non-contrast CT, delayed washout on contrast-enhanced CTs, chemical shift MRI, and PET CTs. For the hormonal status, we try to rule out the Cushing syndrome, overt or max, that is mild autonomous cortisol secretion, or the pheochromocytoma, hyperaldosteronism, or sex hormone or steroid precursor that we try to see. The adrenal imaging. So adrenal imaging, we tend to happen to have CT and MRI at the best to identify the benign lesion. So we want to exclude that the lesion is not malignant. FDG PET is a higher investigation for the detection of the malignancy, and mostly used in patients who are already having some kind of malignancy at hand. CT, as we already know, that it measures the tissue density or the attenuation factor in the Hounsfield units called as HU. Mainly NCCT is used for the adrenal imaging. Adrenals can be seen in the image as these white arrows can be seen, they are showing the adrenals. This is a non-contrast CT of the adrenal where we can see the V-shaped, inverted V-shaped or a Y-shaped gland. This is the kidney, so they are just anterior-superiorly located to the kidney. These are the adrenal glands. Usually they are 5 to 7 centimeters in the length, up to 10 mm of length, and thickness is 5 to 6 mm. And these are the contrast enhanced, the arterial phase of the contrast enhanced CT. We can see the limbs of the gland and the adrenal gland of the cross-sectional imaging. So CT with delayed contrast washout analysis is sometimes required, and we might need the adenomas whenever we are talking of the lesions of the lesions of the incidentaloma or the lesions of the adrenal gland. Mostly we have seen that as the non-functioning adenomas. So adenomas, they are usually lipid rich. They have a very low content of the water. So whenever they are subjected to contrast, they take up the contrast very fast and they happen to lose the contrast very fast. So because of that, there is a rapid contrast washout with the lipid rich adenoma. So if the adenoma is having a high quantity of lipid, the contrast will not stay for a longer period of time. But on the other side, if it is a lipid poor adenoma or metastasis, or the patient is having pheochromocytoma or adrenocortical carcinoma, which are usually lipid poor, so the content of water is much higher, vascularity is higher, so they have a rapid contrast take-up, and this contrast washout also takes up much time. So the delayed washout films, if we take 10 to 15 minutes after giving the contrast, then these images will still show contrast enhancement, and these are suggestive of having a much sinister diagnosis rather than having a lipid-rich adenoma. So adenomas are lipid-rich. Malignant adrenal lesions, which are usually lipid poor, they enhance rapidly, but they will demonstrate a slower washout of the contrast medium. So attenuation measurements we happen to do at specific points of time. We do it first unenhanced NCCT kind of thing, then at 60 seconds we do it so as to have the maximum enhancement, then we do it at 10 to 15 minutes later to see the delayed washout phases. So 2% or 2 proportions are carried out. That is absolute washout, that is enhanced CT Hounsfield minus delayed divided by enhanced minus unenhanced into 100%. And other is relative washout. So if the patient is having a tumor that is homogeneous adenoma or homogeneous mass, if we happen to have a contrast enhancement or we try to have NCCT, it gives an NCCT of more than 10 Hounsfield. If the NCCT is of less than 10 Hounsfield, the mass is homogeneous, then it suggests a benign lesion. If the enhancement, the NCCT goes beyond more than 10 Hounsfield, we go for an contrast enhanced CT with a delayed phase images. If the absolute washout goes beyond 60%, that is the lesion is able to wash out most of the contrast by 15 minutes, 60%, then it is more in favor of benign lesion. And if the relative washout, that is from the point of its maximum enhancement to the delayed image, if it is able to wash out 40%, then it becomes the benign lesion. So how do we work it up? We go for adrenal CT, NCCT, unenhanced imaging workup. Then if the patient is having any tumor or any mass which is homogeneous, that has to be important that the mass should be homogeneous and HU unit is less than 10. So it is if we go back into the CT specifics, the CT thing is that CT goes that the air is considered as minus 1000 Hounsfield, bone is considered as plus 1000 Hounsfield. So anything that is going towards the 0 or below 0 is going to have a very low attenuation, similar to the lipids. The lipids don't have much of the property to enhance or attenuate. So the attenuation power of the lipid-rich component would be less than 10 Hounsfield. So this, if we get on a CT that any homogeneous mass is there with a Hounsfield unit of less than 10, then it is more likely that we are dealing with a benign lesion. So we don't need to worry about much that the patient is having a ACC or a pheochromocytoma or whatever it can be. So no further imaging is required. If the mass is homogeneous with Hounsfield unit of 11 to 20 and tumor is still small, the tumor is small, less than 4 centimeter, we might need additional imaging. Or if it is homogeneous with 11 to 20 more than 4 centimeter, less than 4 with more than 20, or heterogeneous tumor, then again we need more of imaging studies and have to look on the hormonal aspect specifically. and if it is homogeneous with tumor size more than 4 centimeter or heterogeneous mass. Heterogeneous mass are very important that because they can be cystic pheochromocytomas, they can be adenocortical carcinomas with necrosis in between. So these heterogeneous mass, they should always be taken as more of malignant potential or more of risky potential. So how do we proceed? When we do NCCT and we get an HU of less than 10, then it is lipid-rich adenoma. It is a benign adenoma. If the attenuation value is more than 10 Hounsfield, the lipid-poor lesions, we have contrast-enhanced CT, we can go for MR, 18 FDG PET. Absolute washout, if it is more than 60 or more than 40, again it is going into the favor of benign adenoma. If the washout are less, then still it is indeterminate mass, we can go with MRI. So MRI allows us for chemical shift imaging. As I already told that usually the lipid content of adenomas is high and the other malignancies or the other lesions, they have a lipid poor content. So because of the lipid poor content, the water content increases much, and when they are subjected to the MRI and contrast, this is CSI is contrast shift imaging. When we try to give the MR imaging, we try to locate or to have the magnetic field from one direction, and as we reverse the direction of the magnetic field by 180 degree, then it gives that the lipid-rich component of the adenoma or the which have more of lipid, the water content is very low. So they cannot align with the change of the magnetic field and their signal drops. So because of that, the lipid-rich adenoma, they will have, with the CSI contrast shift imaging, they will have a drop in signal. While the other lesions like pheochromocytoma, metastasis, all these, they have high water content, their water will align again into the opposite direction of the magnetic field what we have now subjected. So because of that shift, still their imaging or their contrast will be persisting. So they don't have a kind of drop in the contrast shift imaging. So if MRI with chemical shift imaging, the ratios are taken, but major important is shift in the imaging, the drop in signal is there or not. If the signal drops, then it is more of lipid in nature, more of adenoma, benign towards side. If it is not dropping on the signal side, then it is more of sinister diagnosis or the risky diagnosis for the pheochromocytoma or adenocortical carcinoma. Then if we are still seeing that there is ASR ratio, the adrenal spleen ratio, if it is more than 70 or less than 20% signal loss, then it is indeterminate mass and we can go for FDG PET or percutaneous biopsy after ruling out that the patient, the lesion is not actively secreting catecholamines. Otherwise, patient may land up in hypertensive crisis because of that pheochromocytoma. So what we need to remember is that benign lesions are these imaging criteria or these imaging characteristics are of the benign lesion. That on non-contrast CT, benign lesion usually show a less than 10 Hounsfield unit. MRI with chemical shift, loss of signal intensity will be there. CT with delayed contrast, if we are going on a CT with delayed contrast, then there will be a drop in the, there will be a washout, absolute washout of 60% and a relative washout of 40% can be seen. 18 FDG PET, absence of FDG uptake with any malignant lesion. So these are the kind of benign lesions that we can see on the adrenal CT, that is lipid-rich adenoma, less than 10 Hounsfield or non-contrast CT, signal drop on MR. So these are the lesions. Myelolipoma. Myelolipoma usually have a macroscopic fat. This is the image of myelolipoma. They are large lesions with severely, as compared to the liver, they are hypodense. So because of this hypodensity, we can rule out that this is having kind of pathology that is we need to worry about, much worry about. That is myelolipoma. Then they can have a cyst with water density or no enhancement. So nearly isodense or hypodense lesions with as compared to liver. Benign calcifications can be seen. These are the kind of calcifications that we can see in this cyst. So largely, if the mass is hypodense with washouts, rapid washouts more than 60% and 40%, then the lesion is probably benign. We need not to worry much about these lesions. Then going on to the functional status or the hormonal workup, what we should do. We should go for the clinical assessment. That is basic thing that we should do, careful assessment of the clinical examination in terms of cortisol over-secretion or aldosterone over-secretion or sex steroid over-secretion. We should be seen. Then second, we will be looking for the MAX, that is mild autonomous cortisol secretion. The patient is not having Cushing syndrome, no stigmatas of the Cushing syndrome, patient is not clinically looking like Cushing syndrome, but still the patient is having kind of autonomously secreted cortisol secretion from the this tumor or the gland, then it is considered as MAX. Then FEO, then primary hyperaldo and sex steroid and the steroid precursor that we need to work up. So this is for the clinical assessment that what we can see in Cushing syndrome, Conn syndrome or the FEO or the adrenocortical cancers. then patient may be asymptomatic, or the Cushing stigmata can be there in the patient: moon face, acne, buffalo hump, insulin resistance, skin tags, the purple stria, plethora on the face. These can be seen. Conn syndrome, the patient is mostly asymptomatic, but they usually have hypertension with hypokalemia. And pheochromocytoma patient may be asymptomatic or may have episodic crisis of flushing and having hypertension episodes, headaches, tremors. And adrenocortical cancer, usually the mass is very large in adrenocortical cancers, and the patient might have a dragging pain-like sensation in the abdomen. Otherwise, the patient might have any kind of symptom from the oversecretion of the hormones, because from the adrenocortical cancer. So they can be present there. Going on to MACS. So MACS is, patients are without the clinical signs and symptoms of overt Cushing syndrome, and we happen to do a post-dexamethasone cortisol assessment. So if the patient is not having any signs symptoms of Cushing syndrome, then we evaluate the patient in terms of, because the patient is already having an adrenal tumor, along with the patient is not having any clinical symptoms of Cushing syndrome. Now what we do that the patient should be given if the patient adrenal incidentaloma is there and clinical feature of over Cushing syndrome are present, then we have to work up for the Cushing syndrome. For the workup of Cushing syndrome, a number of battery of tests need to be done. We don't have a single test that specifically can guide that the patient is having Cushing syndrome or not. There are tens and 20s of tests that we need to go on step by step to define Cushing syndrome and to define the etiology of Cushing syndrome. So if the patient is not having clinical features of Cushing syndrome, then we go for ONDST, that is overnight dexamethasone suppression test. We tend to give 1 milligram of dexamethasone tablet at 11 to 12 p.m. in the night, and then serum cortisol are assessed at 8 to 9 a.m. in the next morning. Then serum cortisol, if it is more than 1.8 microgram per DL, then it is considered as MACS, the mild autonomous cortisol secretion. If it is not there, then it is not considered as cortisol hypersecretion. So these patients, they are not considered as the harbinger or the pre-diabetes kind of lesions that the patient will develop overt Cushing syndrome in the lifetime. No, they have a very less risk for developing Cushing syndrome. The patient should be screened for diabetes mellitus, hypertension and vertebral fracture, because even the mild amount of cortisol that is being secreted from the adrenal incidentaloma is enough to cause diabetes, hypertension or the side effects of what we are observing in the Cushing syndrome patients. Presence of comorbidities, the age of the patient, the general condition of the patient should always be taken into account before trying to treat these kind of patients. Second thing that we can have is pheochromocytoma. About the pheochromocytoma, about the incidentaloma, one thing is always mandatory, that exclude pheochromocytoma from any incidentaloma, adrenal incidentaloma if we found. So exclude pheochromocytoma, we have to measure plasma-free metanephrines or urinary fractionated metanephrines. So gone are those times when we used to do the VMA, the vinyl mandelic acid assessment was done. That was the previous era where they were used to be done. But now only more sensitive and more specific markers are there, like free metanephrines from plasma or urinary fractionated metanephrine, that should be done. Even a slight rise of metanephrines is not diagnostic. More than twofold elevation or should be there in the as compared to the upper limit of the normal. The normetanephrine levels more than 900 or metanephrine level more than 400 microgram in 24-hour urine sample are needed to be diagnosed that the patient is harboring a pheochromocytoma. Mostly or around 30 to 40% of the pheochromocytoma may be non-secretory, non-functional. So that has to also be kept in mind, that if it is not secreting, does not exclude the diagnosis of pheochromocytoma. And all patients who are being subjected to the biopsy or who are being planned for the surgery should be screened for the pheochromocytoma specifically. What we need to remember along with that we don't have to just write off the test that urinary metanephrine karwa lo, ya urinary normetanephrine karwa lo, fractionated metanephrine karwa lo. We have to know that these are the drugs that can spuriously increase the level of catecholamines or metanephrine in the urine of the sample, in the plasma of the patient. So these drugs should be discontinued at least. So these are the tricyclic antidepressants, decongestant, buspirone or antipsychotics, prochlorperazine, Respirine and ethanol, illicit drugs like cocaine, heroin, which are sympathetic stimulants. They should be stopped. Then third thing that we need to do is rule out for primary hypoaldo. So adrenal incidentaloma with concomitant hypertension or unexplained hypokalemia If the patient is having this kind of picture, then we should always and always rule out for the primary hyperaldo. It is not that the patient with hyperaldosteronism will always have hypokalemia. The percentage of patients who are having hypokalemia with primary hyperaldosteronism is only 7 to 37%. Not even for 50% patients of hyperaldosteronism are having hypokalemia. 7 to 37% patients are having hypokalemia because of the primary hyperaldosteronism. What is the screening test we should be doing to rule out hyperaldo? That is aldosterone-renin ratio should be done, ARR. It is a very costly test, around 10 to 15,000 cost is there for ARR. So ARR should be done very specifically by the very specific method. The protocol is there that how should we do for ARR, and the values of ARR. The ARR is aldosterone-renin ratio with a PAC. PAC is plasma aldosterone concentration. The things that are written here, that DRC is the direct renin concentration. So renin has two parts, that renin activity can be measured, that is called as plasma renin activity. Another is DRC, direct renin concentration, that can be measured. If we are going to try to measure for the renin, so the sample should never be kept on ice. If we keep the sample on ice for the renin estimation, the prorenin or renin gets converted into the renin. So the concentration of the renin will increase, and thus it will give a false reading. The prorenin will get converted into renin and the readings will be spurious. So the sample for renin should never be kept on ice. And we are here only taking the renin, renin activity, PRA, which is measured in picomole or NJ/ml per hour. So the ratios of what we take for diagnosis are ARR more than 20 with PAC more than 15, or ARR more than 30 with PAC more than 20 are considered significant, and the further workup or confirmatory testing for primary hyperaldo we should look into. If more than 20 PAC is there with hypokalemia, we need not to have confirmatory testing. So what is the approach to do for ARR, how to measure ARR? The patient preparation is very important, that we should correct the hypokalemia first. The patient should not be hypokalemic when we are trying to go for ARR. Sodium intake should not be restricted in patient. Though patient is hypertensive, we have to control the hypertension with other medications and anything, but we cannot reduce the salt intake for the patient. Estrogen containing medication may lower the DRC concentration, and false positive ARR may be there. In the drugs, we have to stop for 4 weeks, like potassium sparing or wasting diuretics, spironolactone, triamterene, any kind of these diuretics or drugs we are using, then we have to stop these drugs for 4 weeks at least. If required, we have to stop beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, CCBs of dihydropyridine group or NSAIDs. It is not necessary to stop these beta blockers, ACE, ARB, DHP, CCB, NSAIDs. If required, if we are getting, because these drugs mostly they cause a false negative interpretation. If the patient, even if the patient is having a primary hyperaldo, they will not be showing primary hyperaldo. The ARR ratio will be suppressed. So if we are getting on these drugs or beta blockers, ACE, ARB, if we are getting a positive result that the patient, it is showing that the patient is having hyperaldo, then we can continue with our testing. We don't need to stop. If we do the test, we get a negative test that ARR is less than the 20 or 30 cutoff, then we have to stop these medications for 2 weeks again, and then we have to retest. Otherwise, these medications, only potassium wasting diuretics or sparing diuretics need to stop. Otherwise, we can do the ARR testing on ACE, ARBs, DHP, beta blockers and all. And how to collect the blood? The patient should be standing or in the upright position, standing, sitting or walking for at least 2 hours. So the sympathetic system has been properly stimulated in the patient. He should be upright for 2 hours, then he should be seated for 5 to 15 minutes, and then we should have to take the sample. It is not just take the sample at any time in the morning. And the sample should not be kept on ice to reduce the conversion of prorenin to renin. Now, the important thing is bilateral incidentaloma. How do we approach to bilateral incidentaloma? So bilateral incidentaloma, usually they are assessed according to the same imaging protocol. Both the adrenal should be assessed separately, and all the masses, if they are separate masses, they should be assessed separately. Patient may have adrenal insufficiency because both the adrenals have been compromised now. 17-hydroxyprogesterone might be useful in these kind of patients because of the congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and because of, under the influence of ACTH, they might have gone into the hyperplastic lesions. What types of bilateral lesion we can see? We can have bilateral macronodular hyperplasia as seen in CH. We can have bilateral adrenal adenomas. We can have morphologically similar but non-adenoma-like lesions like bilateral FEO, which is common in VHL, von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. We can have lymphoma. We can have histoplasmosis. In usually tuberculosis, in late stage of tuberculosis, both the adrenal glands have usually atrophied, so that has not been kept as a diagnosis. Two morphologically different lesions can also be present in both the adrenals. Now, in FNAC, in the adrenal incidentalloma, FNAC or CT-guided biopsy is very rarely indicated when the treatment or the approach or protocol is going to be different. By doing the adrenal FNAC, then only the patient should undergo adrenal FNAC. And whenever we are trying to do an adrenal FNAC or CT-guided biopsy, pheochromocytoma should or must be excluded wholeheartedly, that the patient is not having a pheochromocytoma. Otherwise, the patient might end up in pheochromo crisis and can be fatal for the patient. So the patient FNAC should only be considered in patients who are having non-adrenal malignancy and newly detected adrenal mass, and we want to confirm that the metastasis is there. After careful exclusion of pheochromocytoma only we should do this. Another thing is FNAC of ACC that happens to violate the capsule, and thus FNAC should always be at best avoided in cases of ACC. If we have diagnosed that the patient is already having an ACC, then no need to do an FNAC or CT guided biopsy and make a track so as metastasis to spread. If we have diagnosed already, then no need to do the biopsy. We can just do an open adrenalectomy and get the total tissue for the histopathologic examination. So my take-home messages will be that adrenal incidentalomas are usually the adrenal lesions which are detected surreptitiously, and they are more than 1 centimeter in size. And when imaging, cross-sectional imaging is done for any other reason of the abdomen or whatever we are wanting to see, and we happen to do a cross-sectional imaging of the abdomen and we find an adrenal mass more than 1 centimeter. They are mostly benign, non-functional lesions, but still we need workup so as to rule out pheo and adrenocortical cancers and that kind of problematic things that need to be ruled out. Imaging and hormonal workup should always be done in parallel. If the mass is homogeneous with less than 10 HU, then most likely the lesion is benign, we don't have to worry. MAX is diagnosed, the patient is not having the clinical features of Cushing syndrome, ONDST is giving a level of more than 1.8 microgram DL. Pheo must be ruled out, especially if biopsy or surgery is planned. Up to 15% of the patients of pheo are normotensive, and up to 30 to 40% of the patients who are harboring pheo, surgically diagnosed pheo, they may not have hypersecretion of the catecholamines or the normetanephrine. In hyperaldo, serum potassium may be normal. Up to 7 to 37% population is only having hypokalemia, otherwise population is not having hypokalemia, and it is not recommended as a screening test. So screen for hyperaldo, we should go for aldosterone-renin ratio, and the sample should be taken in a very specific and proper way. FNAC of the adrenal gland should be done in very specific cases, otherwise it should not be attempted. In asymptomatic patients, if the patient is having a benign lesion, homogeneous, less than 4 centimeter, we can have annual metabolic follow-up for up to 4 to 5 years. If indeterminate lesion is there and we don't find any kind of problematic things in that diagnosis, then the repeat radiological imaging can be done to 3 to 6 months to assess the growth of the mass in the adrenal. Thank you.